An Italian cruise ship turned away by Thailand and Malaysia over COVID-19 fears and has docked in Singapore as part of a scheduled call. According to the latest update from the Maritime and Port Authority of Singapore, as of 9:30 p.m, fewer than 50 passengers remain on board.
Based on earlier information, there was an estimated 2,000 passengers on that ship, and none of the passengers is said to be showing any symptoms of fever or respiratory illness. But everyone on board will still undergo health screenings once they disembark. Ahmad Khan tells us more.
Costa Fortuna appeared on the horizon just after 7 a.m. on Tuesday. In about an hour's time, the voyage for the 2,000-odd passengers would come to an end. I'm on board a bumboat and I'm just meters away from the Costa Fortuna. Now, the ship had just docked at the Marina Bay Cruise Center a while ago. I understand that passengers on board the ship are waiting to disembark. Now, it seems quite peaceful and not a lot going on, at least from what I can see, other than pockets of passengers just hanging around by their room balconies. Among the passengers were dozens of Italians, whose home country has been placed under lockdown as COVID-19 spreads among its population. At about 9 a.m, passengers started walking through a link bridge that took them back to land. Just last week, Costa Fortuna was turned away from Phuket and Penang amid COVID-19 fears. Singapore authorities are stressing that this is a scheduled call and that Singapore is one of the ship's home ports. Unscheduled calls have been disallowed here since 24th February. In the past 2 weeks, the country has handled more than 10 scheduled calls by cruise ships and disembarked more than 5,000 passengers. Costa Fortuna had not picked up any new passengers since it left Singapore last Tuesday. It has also cancelled its next cruise that was due to depart here today.
Security was tight at the terminal, with the arrival and departure halls closed to the public and media. Passengers who recently travelled to affected regions such as northern Italy and Iran will stay on the ship until they are taken directly to the airport for their flights. These passengers had entered Singapore and boarded the cruise ship before a travel ban for those regions kicked in last week. Buses were waiting at the compound since morning, some of which had labels that marked the passengers' flight numbers or hotel names. For the other passengers, they still had to go through thermal and visual screenings to check for COVID-19 symptoms after they disembarked. Despite their holiday plans taking an unexpected turn, some passengers still managed to make the most out of it.
Everything is okay. People are happy. We had a lot of fun.
Singapore authorities say that almost all foreign passengers on the cruise ship will leave the country within the next 2 days.
It would not have been right for Singapore to reject Costa Fortuna as its passengers had embarked on their journey from Singapore, according to the co-chair of the country's multi-ministry task force on COVID-19. National Development Minister Lawrence Wong says that the majority of the passengers on that cruise ship are leaving Singapore tonight.
If they were to come back to Singapore, because they had embarked from Singapore, the tourists were already in Singapore, and they left with the intention to come back to Singapore. So that's why we agreed to accept them, and we took extra precautions, as we have done for all cruise ships as well, meaning to say, for any traveler with exposure to the affected regions, we check them thoroughly medically by a doctor, and then we make sure that they fly straight out from the cruise ship to the airport.